Welcome to the Cal Park Bros podcast. I'm your host, Terrence, and with me is my co host, Jason, calling in from the Batcave in Indianapolis. Jason, how are you, my good man?
Hey man, we're doing this a little late on Tuesday, but guess what? Or excuse me, not even Tuesday, on a different day, Wednesday. But guess what? We're still getting it in. It's still episode 30. It's dirty 30. That's all that matters. We're still doing it. Still bring that same energy, bring that same heat, bring that same fire. It don't matter. It's good, Terrence. What's good with you?
Uh, Life is good, man. I I love that you've decided to tell the world that we're actually doing this on a different day.
The people
Uh,
need to know that no matter what day it is, we still bring that fire, that heat, that energy, and we still gonna drop that episode on Thursdays like we always do. You know what it is.
right, right. Definitely makes for much more expedited editing time frame. As always, much appreciated. Folks, thank you for listening. This is episode 30 of the Cal Park Bros podcast. For the uninitiated, Cal Park Bros is the podcast to hear. Cal Park Bros is a weekly podcast for fans of culture, current events, sports, life, and entertainment.
Folks, and as always, we are your hosts, Terrence and Jason, and every single Thursday, we bring to you a brand new episode where we discuss the current events of the day, sports, and the athletes we love.
And even some of the athletes we loathe. No matter the topic, you can expect a brutally honest and fun exchange of snark while learning through the lens of our 30 years of friendship that originated in Calumet Park, Illinois.
And for more Cowport Bros content, make sure you're connecting up with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, for more behind the scenes of the Cowport Bros podcast, and just to engage with us every single day. But make sure you remember, and very importantly, that the Cowport Bros podcast is available to listen and subscribe for free wherever you listen to podcasts.
Like us, love us, share us, follow us. And folks, hell, if you like us, why wouldn't you?
Exactly, folks. Episode 30. We're about to get dirty for episode 30. Let's do it.
But before we get all dirtied up, we got to talk about doing it for the kids. And I'm talking about doing it for the kids. This is news. This is the first time that kids 5 to 11 are actually going to have the opportunity to get vaccinated regarding COVID-19. The Pfizer version, the vaccine, has been approved. And I'm referencing our article actually from the American Academy of Pediatrics .org. COVID-19 vaccine for children ages 5 to 11 received final approval, dated November 3rd. The journalist is Melissa Jenko. Pediatricians can start vaccinating children ages 5 to 11 against COVID-19. Federal health officials gave final approval using the Pfizer slash or dash BioNTech vaccine for about 28 million in this age group Tuesday. And the American Academy of Pediatrics released a policy statement recommending all eligible children without country addictions get vaccinated. I actually got to look up what the hell that means. I assume that they would need any conflicts related to the vaccine or what's inside it. So I'm sharing a quote here. Sharing this life-saving vaccine with our children is a huge step forward that provides us all with more confidence and optimism about the future. AAP President Lee Savio Beers said in a news release. Pediatricians are eager to participate in the immunization process and talk with families about this vaccine. We want to ensure that access to the vaccine is equitable and that every child is able to benefit. Jason, um, what are your thoughts on this news coming out?
Well, I mean, it was only a matter of time before we got to the point to where kids 5 to 11 will be able to get some type of vaccine, whether it be all three or just one. So it's really more of a question of when, and finally we got to the when. Uh, I don't have the date exactly when the vaccines were first introduced, but they were definitely earlier in the year. I don't want to say January, maybe April-ish. So 6, 7 months after we had the original vaccine, finally kids of that 5 to 11 age range, kids who go into middle school, elementary school, now they can get vaccinated. I was going to say if they so choose, but most likely, let's be honest here, if their parents so choose them get vaccinated, that's pretty much what it's going to boil down to here. And we'll talk about that more later. Um, but hey, it's a good thing. Definitely, like I always say, if you're someone who wants to get vaccinated or have your kids vaccinated, definitely go do so. And now there's nothing restricting anybody from doing so, provided you're at least 5. Obviously, if you're younger than that, you're SOL for right now. Um, but it's a good thing. So one thing I did agree with you on is that when it comes to kids going to school, uh, again in that middle school, elementary school range, so now they can get that protection they need, and then also too, I know schools, just like certain jobs, had certain requirements, restrictions that are protocols that had to be followed by unvaccinated and vaccinated, so forth and so forth. Now they can, all be vaccinated if they so choose and go from there. Um, so I was also very curious too where we stood as of right now when it comes to how much of the country is actually fully vaccinated. And obviously, we couldn't include people under 12 in that yet. We're still getting there. But as far as the total population, including everybody, according to CDC .gov, which was updated every day at 8 p.m. Eastern, as of today, Wednesday, 58.5% of the U.S. population are fully vaccinated. Not just one dose, but fully vaxxed. Um, now, just to be more transparent as well, the people who are 12 and over, we're 68.5%. So now I will say real quick before I throw it back to you, I was very curious when it comes to okay, now that kids are from 5 to 11 are able to do this, how might that overall affect our possible overall total of full vaccination? So I looked it up, and according to ChildStats.gov, there's about 24 million ish kids in this country who are just from 6 to 11, not even including the 5-year-olds, but just from 6 to 11. So if you were to take that 24, even if half of those 6 to 11-year-olds, just half, got vaccinated, fully vaxxed, that would increase our total fully vaccinated population from 58.5 to around 62 or 63%. That's only if half of them got it. And obviously, that's half of the 6 to 11-year-olds, not including all the 5-year-olds, things like that. So it's very possible that more of them get it, and we'll go more higher than that. I think 50% is probably a good guesstimate based off of where the adults are, or I guess kids above 12 when it comes to that. Like I was saying to you before yesterday, and like I mentioned earlier, I think it has the potential to be a lot more than 50% because just like your household, some other relatives in my household, like I mentioned before, parents, if they're vaccinated, they're probably going to encourage or force, we'll say, whatever, their kids to get vaccinated as well. So it's very likely that any kid in that household, they're going to get vaxxed too. So it's really going to fall along the lines of what their parents most likely think. So that's why I think 50% is a good estimate, but I think potentially it could be more depending on how households break down. So um, those are kind of my initial thoughts to kind of see how this could change things. I have other things to mention as well, but I want to throw it back to you and see what you think about it.
Yeah. Jason, first off, thank you for your initial thoughts. I The first thing I thought when I saw that news is like, one, well, we knew this was coming. You and I was talked about this on the podcast in a previous episode that I would feel much better about the school year if more kids had access to the vaccine. Like everyone's been talking about getting back to normal or trying to get back to get to a new normal, ignoring the fact that there's no way in hell that's going to fucking happen when you don't even have at the time when we were talking about that right before school started, you don't even have a majority of school age children that can get the shot. So I feel like we're finally at a point where at least there's one option that is viable the for school age children. I think that's going to be a huge relief for number one, children um, that may have some anxiety about going to school and something that may, there is no golden fleece. There's not an invincibility star related to infectious diseases, but the reality is COVID has changed not only our our nation but our world, and to act as though if there isn't some anxiety over this pandemic would be ill conceived. And so knowing now that there are options for immunization for children 5 to 11, that's a win for the public. That's a win for a lot of people's spirits. Um, whether you have kids or not, that's a win for schools, teachers, administrators, um, everything that kind of is where the kid. A lot of times, these places are ran like the parent is the customer, when in reality, the kid is the customer, because that infrastructure serves to serve children, whether you have kids or not. And I think that is a positive good for our society right now, because those kids, they may not have the worst symptoms necessarily. I don't want to, and I don't want to certainly want to assume that any kids that did contract COVID, because I really feel like what Joe Rogan said was really fucking dangerous, which is, well, if you're young and healthy, yeah, you don't need to worry about getting the shot. And I'm like, that's that's crazy. What I'm saying is, now that this has been opened up to more people, that's a good get for the world. And that's really just my thoughts. And I also wanted to actually call out contraindication. Contraindication is something such as a symptom or condition that makes a particular treatment or procedure inadvisable. So, what effectively the Academy of what the Academy of what the American Academy of Pediatrics is saying is that as long as you don't have anything like that, they would recommend all eligible children to get the vaccine. So I did want to quickly look that up and say, oh, well, that's what they meant. So
You just wanted to
back to
sound
you.
smart. That's what it was. You wanted to make sure you sounded smart for the people, which is fine.
I wanted to make sure I pronounced that shit right, because I was like Contra.
Well, yeah, I'm sure.
What,
Yeah, I'm sure you heard Contra and automatically went back to the old school video game. So
either that or I ran.
fair enough, fair enough. But folks, I guarantee you, this is probably not gonna be the last time we mention Joe Rogan. So if you're a fan, stick around for that. But yeah, that's a good point, Terrence. That this is a huge win, not just for these kids, obviously that want again or going to be vaccinated, for one reason or another. It's a win for the whole school because now teachers who themselves probably are vaccinated can feel a little safer knowing that the kids in the elementary school classes that are teaching or middle school classes that are teaching, now they'll know that at least some of them, maybe even half, maybe, or at least can be vaccinated, so they can feel that safety as well, or at least a little more. So good for them. Nothing wrong with that. Um, and again, I'll say that despite my previous opinion from episode 8 when it comes to whether or not they should be back in school in the first place anyway yet. Um, but we don't have to go back in there again. So, um, but now obviously we're not going to know, have any solid numbers for this for at least a little while. But definitely the availability for the vaccines are there. Um, and like I said, I know you and I talked about this the other day. And I mentioned my cousin's family, uh, who they posted a picture of him online saying, "Hey, now he's got the shot. Household is fully vaxxed." Um, but I bring that up just out of curiosity in regards to the numbers wise, because I mentioned to you yesterday that if, again, obviously this is big guess and we're not going to know, but if all these 5 to 11-year-olds increase our total population of people in the country being fully vaxxed, I know the herd immunity number is like 60, 70%, whatever it was. But if they push us over that mark of the 60%, I had to go back and question: is there a need for all these other COVID mandates for the adults? Now, obviously, at the time, you can say yes, but if going forward, I don't know. Are they? And actually, just come to find out, there's a little back from that legally when it comes to that deadline. But yeah, it's I have to agree with you. For all those who wanted the vaccine, it's definitely a win-win. Not even just teachers, even their parents as well. Um, and personally, and you mentioned too that you think the customers are the students at the school. Yeah, that's probably correct. But let's be honest here: the customers are the parents. Let's be honest. The parents are the ones that try to run the schools. So let's call it out. But that,
Yeah, but yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. And maybe they run it because they feel like, well, little Jimmy should be should be calling his own shots because that's what he does at home, right? So I don't know. Yeah, I think the way forward is definitely going to be a two-pronged attack because number one, not everyone who has access to the shot is going to get the shot. And there could be a variety of reasons for that. I mean, ironically, the the American Academy of Pediatrics is fucking calling it out in this fucking article. So, you know, to me, science is going to say everything, just not the convenient parts. Um, and they appear to be doing it in this article. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I anticipate this is going to be a multi-prong attack to manage this pandemic for the foreseeable future. At least, unless you're Florida or Texas, then it's just we just gonna be free nosing it everywhere.
hey, if you're gonna mention those states when it comes to being that way, you gotta throw Georgia in there now too. So no offense to people who live in Georgia, but yeah, you can get this smoke. Um, but yeah, so yeah, definitely is a multi-pronged attack. I I definitely I'll say this stuff happened just now in the first week ish of November. So I'd be very curious to see what numbers are. Hell, even a month from now, even if we want to take it to the beginning of the year in 2022, January 1st, what will numbers be then when it comes to vaccinations? Because like I said, availability is there. So and obviously there's gonna be plenty of time for kids to be fully vaxxed by the beginning of January. Even given the 4 weeks between each shot and then the 2 weeks after that. Again, provided any kid gets it now. But I'd say by the end of January, we could see these fully vaxxed numbers heavily increased. I agree with you that there are going to be people who have access to the shot who aren't going to get it. But that's why I throw that 50% number out there because I find it can go either way. I would think it'd be more than 50% of these kids that wind up getting the shot. But I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be very interesting to see, and also very interesting to see what states wind up having their percentages of this stuff go on because we also know there are certain states out there that have low vaccine numbers, and we don't need to go into which ones they are. But I agree with you though. Well, not agree per se, but
You can say it. It's okay. You can agree with me. It's okay.
I'll
It's legal.
I'll never agree with you on anything ever. But I also very curious though because obviously I don't have any kids, but I am an adult, and also you never know how your mind's going to change when you have a kid. But I also be very curious of those adults with kids who they themselves personally are against the vaccine, how they would feel about their kid getting the vaccine. Like if I can still be against it, but I'll still might encourage you to get it just because you are going to school, you are going to be around other kids, blah blah blah. You're actually out there in the world.
I mean, that doesn't track though because you know your household is also part of the world. So
Well, but see, that goes into what I always say about myself. When it comes to that adult can still take their own precautions when it comes to doing everything else that they're supposed to do to protect themselves. Also, you can't control what other people are doing. You know what I mean? Like, like, like if I were to meet up with you somewhere, like say for family dinner or whatever in Chicago, yeah, I can still take my precautions all I want to, but I have no idea what you've been doing. I have no idea what anybody in your family's doing. I have no idea who they've come into contact with. So that's what I'm saying. When it comes to their kids going out in the world, because obviously their kids are going to have to go to school in most cases, because most places that I know of at least, which I know it's not every school in America, like we talked about before, most schools this school year they're not virtual anymore. It's like you're back in the classroom, you have a teacher in front of you, and that's it. So, and obviously, up until now, again, if you were in a grade where kids are all 11 or 5, 11 or younger, then no one's vaccinated. So now they can change. So um, it's very interesting to see how it's going to work out. I do have a list up of like the states when it comes to breakdown of like what the vaccination rates are in each state, which we again don't need to go into. But it's very interesting to see the difference between the number one most vaccinated state and the one that's last. Um, yeah. So also curious to see how that may change as well when it comes to any kind of pecking order or whatnot. Also, you can't change the overall culture because of this, but still, it's just something to kind of keep an eye on. I think. I mean, well, I will go and say that Indiana, unfortunately, is in the bottom, definitely in the bottom half of that number. But yeah, so there's that. And yes, Illinois is better than Indiana. So there you go. Not probably not in every way, but at least in that one, I'll say
In a
that.
few ways.
Yeah,
In a
no,
few
yeah,
ways.
no offense to my home state, but you can get the smoke.
Awesome. Yeah, I think. Well, one thing I was going to call out is that article just stated about 1.9 million children ages 5 to 11 since the start of the pandemic had been infected. More than 8,300 were hospitalized and 94 died, according to federal data.
Now, see, that's gonna be interesting too because, yeah, I agree with you. It definitely, obviously, we've known kids who have gotten it, and also I unfortunately know some that died. But of the ones that are still living, how many of those kids or their parents are going to say, "Well, he doesn't need to get the vaccine. He has that. I've already had it. Immunity." Folks, you can't see it yet, but I'm throwing up air quotes there. Because again, people may use any excuse they want to not to get the vaccine, which is what it is.
Yeah.
It's their household,
Yeah. I mean,
whatever.
you can use whatever excuse, but I also reserve the right to call you out on that fuckery too. Um, Not you specifically, but
Yeah,
if someone were to say
you were
that,
talking to me. I know you were. You
the
were looking right at me with those beady eyes of yours.
no, I actually I'm looking at this article, uh, and it says the death toll in the past year puts COVID in the top 10 causes of the age for this death group. You know what's crazy about that, Jason?
What's that?
A majority of kids were remote, and it still managed to be in the top 10 of causes of death for that age group.
Well, that's a very good point. They were still remote, but they're remote from school, probably not remote from life. I mean, obviously some stuff was shut
Right,
down, but that doesn't mean you were stopping doing everything. You know what I mean? So
right. I mean, a lot of stuff was shut down, but I do find it incredibly fascinating that even with the restricted path for kids to congregate,
mhm.
that's how that's how catastrophic COVID-19 is. Um,
And honestly, that's why I was kind of, my perception is there's probably more than 50% of those 5 to 11 year olds. But I just kind of feel like with the way adults are, that 50% mark is probably potentially more realistic. But I think easily it could be more like 60%, 70%, or even more, just because of what you said. Now that they are back in the world, you know, for the most part, like normal, at least school wise, I think potentially it could be a lot more kids than 50% of them get vaccinated. So, and not to mention all the kids that may be entering into that age range who aren't there now, like all those 4 year olds that may be turning 5 in the next few months. You know, so I got to count for that too. So,
yep, definitely some age movement. So very important context. All right. That concludes our first segment on the Pfizer vaccine availability for children. Coming up next, we're going to be talking about somebody that was trying to talk real slick. Aaron Rodgers coming up on Cal Park Bros.